Welcome to Theme Park Wizard. For you, we have OG55, the crew, Vash Guy, and OG55 himself to talk about Iger and Chapek and what's going on over there. So, Dre, where can we all find you?
Hey, best place to find me is going to be at Vash Guy on Twitter. It's right down there, as you can see right there. For all the, as we would say, let's see if I can find it here. Oh.
Robust
Discussion right there. As Christine Wastelands McCarthy, which is a very interesting player in this game, would say. And, well, if you want to see myself or my esteemed OG55, well, you can go to the channel, Orange Grove 55, where you can find shows like Citrus Corner, of course, Orange Grove, Orange Nerd, and Freshly Squeezed, where your source for juice and news and info squeezed fresh right from the Grove. And because we're on Ethan's show, well, I gotta play it, even though we're not probably not going to talk about much Universal, or maybe we do. I don't know. We'll see. Gotta do it for Ethan. And that's where you find me.
Brilliant. And OG, where are we finding you?
You can find me on Orange Grove 55 on YouTube, where I am joined by this guy right up here, Mr. Vash Guy, host of the Freshly Squeezed show on the channel. We do a lot of content on, honestly, a lot of like Disneyland resort stuff, but we dip into the corporate end of things. We talk a lot about Bobby Chapek. We talk a lot about Bob Iger. We talk a lot about even like, you know, like the streaming and movie and TV side of things. We do a lot of just entertainment stuff also. So check us out, Orange Grove 55 on YouTube. And you know what, Ethan, I just want to kick it off because we're doing it live, right? Are we doing it live, Ethan? Are we doing it live?
Live.
We're doing it live. F it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
That's
Thing
right.
sucks.
There you go.
There we go. And then one more thing before we start.
And now your host,
Theme Park Wizard.
That's right. What's up? I feel like I should win a WWE match now after that.
So hype.
Right.
Wow. First of all, hey, what's up, casual? Thanks for the $2. Money's nice. No, thanks for the $2. And thanks for joining me on this Christmas morning. Feels like a Christmas morning.
It does.
And before we start, don't worry, everybody watching. Your Super Nintendo World update is uploading. I know I'm going to question about it. Be up later on. But we have an Iger and a Chapek. And on a Sunday night at a Chargers game, sitting in SoFi Stadium, I got this ridiculous text from Mr. OG down there saying that Iger's back. Like, he's just joking around with me. I mean, why is he playing? Hello, people. Hello, T.S. Wade. Why is he joking around with me when I'm at a football game? And then I saw everybody else. And then the whole of Twitter for once went into a resounding rejoice. You'll never see that again. So let's break it down. What happened, OG?
Well, whoa, loaded question. What happened? Whoa. No, what happened was I think there's a lot that was going on, and we're kind of learning a lot more as we go. But what happened was I think that like Chapek has had a series of missteps along the way. The ScarJo situation, the Florida Bill situation, the PR situation overall. And from what we're hearing, this is kind of new as of like I think yesterday. There were kind of murmurs of like Bob Chapek sort of trying to manipulate the numbers to make the Disney Plus thing look better than it was. Now that, in my opinion, and Dre and I, we talked about this on the phone last night. That, in my opinion, look, it kind of tracks, you know, because who was like in all these reports that we see, who was like the main kind of person spearheading this Chapek removal? Well, it was Christine Waistlines McCarthy. Right. And she is the chief financial officer of the Walt Disney Company. So this is exactly the person that would kind of sound the alarm if Bobby C was sort of cooking the books or fudging the numbers or trying to manipulate data to make himself look a little better. So I don't know. I think that it's looking more and more like Bobby C was trying to kind of do some, kind of fancy footwork in regard to the numbers. And I think that Waistlines McCarthy wasn't having it, and she snitched basically, to say the least. And I think that's kind of that's why you had that Sunday night announcement. That's why you had the panic, the emergency response to this whole thing, was because, well, whenever you're dealing with financials and you're dealing with a CEO that's kind of trying to fudge the numbers, you're going to get a pretty interesting response. But that's what I think might have happened here, is that Chapek was trying to, fudge numbers, and it ultimately led to him getting removed. But I don't know. What do you think, Dre? What are your thoughts on this?
To put a little bit more meat on these bones. This comes to us from the Wall Street Journal, actually.
Real quick,
before you say meat on those bones.
And there's the biggest bargain of all.
The biggest bargain of all, indeed. Right? That's Christine Waistlines McCarthy, and apparently she's got a bargain to share with us via the Wall Street Journal. Says this. What is it? Like many of its rivals, Disney is now trying to shift from a growth-oriented streaming strategy to a profitability strategy, but is doing so in a difficult economic environment and an intensely competitive environment. That's true. Disney is moving some shows that were supposed to be Disney Plus originals and air them first on other networks, including the Disney Channel. People familiar with the matter said. By doing so, the cost of production and marketing of the shows, which included mystery show The Mysterious Benedict Society and medical drama It's Doogie Kama Aloha MD, I believe is what it's called, would be shifted away from the streaming service, making its financial performance look better, they said. Ms. McCarthy was concerned about the strategy, those same people said. So we've seen this before. Like, we've seen some kind of, accounting changes, right? You put it over here, you do this over here. I remember, one of the famous ones, right? I believe... I had to check, but I think Bob Chapek was actually running consumer products at the time, where he integrated Disney Interactive into consumer products. This was a few years ago, and Disney Interactive, if anybody was seeing those quarterly earnings reports leading up to that change, it was always a drag on the company, always losing money, whatever. Right. But when it was folded into consumer products, well, problem goes away, right? At least on the financial statement every single quarter. Additionally, we've seen some kind of accounting strategies where it's like you see the characters in Avengers Campus, right? The plethora of characters. They have a new one every single time a show comes out and so forth. Right. We love it. But from what I understand, the budgets for those characters actually don't come from the theme park division. They actually come from Marvel themselves as part of their advertising budget. So we've seen some shifts, especially in the Chapek era, for these things before. But this one is a little bit different. And as I was explaining to OG55 last night, a lot of shareholders made investment decisions based on how well that DTC division specifically was doing. And when you're transferring funds to, or you're having Disney's linear television division actually take up that slack for the DTC division and minimize those losses at that streaming division, well, then that's when you really kind of get into some dicey territory, because you have investors making financial decisions based on that performance.
Well, and the fact that, and really, the response to Bob Chapek, right? Like that Sunday night announcement.
Yeah. Very uncharacteristic. Never happens.
That's not normal.
No.
That's not normal. Like if Chapek wasn't performing, like let's say he was on the up and up, right?
Yeah.
Chapes was on the up and up. He just wasn't cutting it. He doesn't understand Disney, right?
Mhm.
It would be a much more gradual sort of like, all right, like a Kathleen Kennedy, right? Okay, after 85, we'll let you retire and you can go in dignity, right?
Yeah. You can put out a
Chapek
statement,
wasn't-
you can do all those things.
Right, a statement, all that stuff. Chapek wasn't allowed to do that. It was like Friday night, I think they made the call to Iger, and by Sunday night, Chapek was gone. Well,
Yeah.
and the CFO, the chief financial officer, was the one kind of spearheading this whole thing. That to me is a huge red flag that, like, you know what, there was something going on that wasn't really 100% kosher that the CFO didn't feel comfortable with, and they had to get rid of this guy almost immediately. It doesn't look good for Tapes. It doesn't, you know?
And by Susan Arnold specifically, this was kind of the most surprising part, because as we're learning in the trades, apparently Susan Arnold, who chairman of the board at Disney, was Chapek's biggest champion. And argued on his behalf multiple times to board members who had were on shaky ground with him in multiple ways. Apparently, there were key board members who were reaching out to Tom Staggs and Kevin Myers as recently as 6 months ago, actually, saying, "Hey, would one of you or maybe in fact both of you be interested in heading up the Mouse House?" And apparently that was contingent on a deal with Candlelight Media, which I guess Chapek had to sign off on, so that didn't necessarily go anywhere at that time. But you can kind of see the board kind of like reevaluating and saying, I don't know if we should really be sticking with this guy. Apparently the contract that Chapek had just recently signed, now, what we heard was it was good for 3 years, but apparently there was a concession made because the board wasn't necessarily all in on Chapek even at that time. So the concession was to kind of backdate that contract a little bit so that they wouldn't be stuck with Chapek for the full 3 years. This is, I think Chapek knew he was kind of on thin ice. I think he knew that, hey, we got to make these quarters look as good as they possibly can. And when you go, quarter to quarter chasing, right? I think even Bob Iger said this. It's like, that's not a place where you want to be. You shouldn't be, chasing stock price or stock value and so forth. And I think Chapek got into that rut and he could never quite turn it around, which, look, to be honest, he was dealt a crappy hand himself, as we all know, right?
Absolutely.
As the ship's heading towards the iceberg, captain's like, okay, you take the wheel. I'm going to go down to the lower decks. It's like, okay, that's, yeah, I'm just gonna check out these lifeboats here. I'm just gonna check them out. Just gonna kind of see. You take care of everything. You're fine. That kind of thing. And that wasn't great. But and the other thing too is, let's be honest, Wall Street changed its kind of focus on a dime. It was, okay, we understand it's the streaming game. We understand that, it's going to take a huge amount of capital investment in order to create that content repository and compete with Netflix. We got that, understand, no problem. Whatever losses we'll continue to endure, but with a vision down the road for profitability. Then it became, we need profits now. That's a really hard thing to shift from one extreme to the other like that.
Right.
And I think Chapek fell victim to it.
No, absolutely. And we do have a audio clip from Chapek in regards to this. One moment.
Apologize for not being the ally that you needed me to be.
Oh, that's okay, Chapek.
That's it.
No,
That's
it's
it.
okay. We forgive you. We forgive you, Chapek. Now, there is a theory out there that Mr. Iger, he left only to plot his return to be a white knight, knowing Chapek would fail.
This is interesting.
On that, Mr. Dre.
Well, go ahead. Go ahead, OG. You got something to say on this?
Well, I do. Okay, here's the thing. I think a little bit of it is like, okay, I think Iger, he left right before the pandemic, right before the lockdowns. There was definitely something there like, okay, I'm out. I want to protect my legacy. You deal with it. Okay. And Dre and I have criticized this many times on our channel because like that was a thing. And that, honestly, that's something that like was really an eye opener for me personally, where it's like, well, wait a minute. I thought you gave a shit about Disney. So if you actually care about Disney, why are you like piecing out and giving it to Chapek right when like the toughest times are ahead?
Yeah.
Right. That was a huge issue. So yes, that was definitely a thing. But a lot of it too, to be fair to Chapes, a lot of it too was like kind of manufactured. Iger kind of inserting himself, you know, maybe leaking to the trades, sort of, you know, telling his Hollywood buddies, hey, drop this hit piece on Chapes, yada, yada, yada. So a lot of it was manufactured. Absolutely. But there was a lot of actually, I don't know how to, I guess, organic.
There were legitimate mistakes made.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that kind of...
Yeah, there was legitimate mistakes made, but there was also a lot of manufactured kind of bullshit inserted into it.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, you had Bob Iger who couldn't let it go, right? And he's, you know, Chapek's in the driver's seat, and you have Iger cranking on the steering wheel every now and again.
Right.
You know, it's like that's gonna cause some chaos, obviously. And it's like, well, can you really blame Chapek much for that? When, look, I mean, my feeling is you had a lot of Iger loyalists in there. You really had to kind of you know, root those people out and start from a foundation in which you were kind of in full control and had loyal members around you. And he just never got to that point for one reason or another. Did have a lot of talent walk out the door, though, which was another reason why the board was kind of evaluating that. But I will say on the theory, look, I actually heard this theory from a pretty good source. OG, you know who I'm talking about, right? I mean,
yeah, and I can confirm it's a great source because he's been very spot on almost every single time.
Right. I heard it directly from this source's mouth in person, I believe, back in, I believe it was November of 2020, November 2021, somewhere around there.
In person. Wow.
Yes. Yeah. Actually invited that person over to the timeshare that we were staying at, but that's a whole nother story. And this person told me, it's like, yes, that was kind of the mindset behind the quick transition, you know, using Chapek as kind of like this fall guy, knowing that he would fail, and then Iger kind of steps in. And we kind of got rumblings of a little bit of that from the Hollywood Reporter, right? Where, you know, it famously comes out and says, well, Iger's coming back on his white horse, and he's here to save Disney. And Iger, you know, is saying, oh, look, I ran this company for 15 years. I can't possibly have Chapek run this thing on his own. And now we know that he kind of felt undermined, not just from that, but also from some, you know, issues regarding layoffs and CARES Act funding and so forth. Apparently, Chapek wanted to go ahead and do that before the CARES Act funding was actually passed by the Congress and signed into law. And Iger wanted to go ahead and wait so as to have those cast members reap those benefits. And that was a point of contention there as well. It's a fascinating melodrama here. And there's, we're still finding out a lot about it, but there's still more to be had, and it's taken an interesting turn here, to say the least.
Absolutely. Now, while all this happening, do you guys think the product will suffer while they're focusing on all of this?
I I think it depends on where you stand, because like if you, okay, for example, like if you are somebody that doesn't like woke in your content,
you need a job for that.
Yeah, if you don't like woke in your content, then yes, it will suffer. Okay, because Iger is not getting the woke out of Disney. Okay, that's not gonna happen. But if you're more into like, I don't know how to say it, but if you were happy with the content that came out of the Iger era, the last 15 years, then you'll probably be satisfied, because we're going to get more of that, right? We'll get more of that. But if you're looking for Iger to come in and like, de-woke Disney, and they're not going to be like politically like motivated or like overtly political, well, okay, well, yeah, you're going to be very disappointed because really that ship sailed. That ship sailed. Chapek was like the last hope in regards to that, and anytime you get any kind of like CEO into like one of these major Hollywood companies, you're going to have an element of like wokeness because it's the industry. Like they're known to be more progressive, more liberal, right? And Chapek was like the best chance that you had to get the woke out or to get the progressivism out of Disney. Now he's gone, and Iger certainly isn't going to roll that back. Okay, so it really depends on where you kind of stand. So if you like what Iger produced in the last 15 years, then you're going to love the next 2 years because it'll be much more of the same.
Right.
If you're not a fan of that, then you probably would be disappointed.
And with that, I mean, there's a good chance. The problem is with the product, the product takes so long to actually develop, right? I mean, it takes, any one of these films and movies take what? 3-4 years, and Bob Iger's only there for 2 years. Now, we're kind of speculating that maybe he might extend that out, but apparently it was his wife, Willow Bay, who was like, look, listen, you have 2 years.
Oh.
If you decide by the end of those 2 years to extend that, because remember, Bob Iger's the guy that put off his retirement 4 times, right? so she's none too pleased with this entire situation. She's saying, okay, well, if you go beyond those 2 years, I'm going to get Giselle's lawyer on the phone and we're going to have a discussion. That's what that was, right? Now she was saying it jokingly, but there's a tinge of seriousness there, I believe.
Yes, hello, half joking. So Iger, hey, 2 years or you're in the doghouse, buddy.
Right. And so we have to look at that mandate, right? The mandate from Iger is not to really, improve or create a better product, right? It's to set them on a path for growth,
right,
and find a successor. Now, as part of that path for growth, I think some of that talent that we've lost over the years, I think some of those guys are coming back. Maybe not all of them, but maybe a chunk of them. Because, really think about over the last 2 years, how many people we have lost, right? If we include, February 2020 and to this point, right? We got Kevin Meyer, we got Bob Weiss, we got, Jeff Morrell was on and then off, right? And Peter Rice, we lost Bob Weiss, Joe Rohde, Kevin Rafferty. We have lost a slew of names. James Gunn recently, right? We've lost a slew of talent and just walked out the door. And I think that was one of the things that Susan Arnold was looking at going, wow, we've lost a lot. And Chapek's talking about cutting more. It's like, okay, well, that makes us a little bit uncomfortable. So that was maybe one of the other reasons that they had moved with such haste. Also, too, you got to think about what he can change in this time and how the product can improve. I think the parks, look, we're probably not going to get big projects announced, okay? Because what's the incentive, right? We need all the CapEx that we can possibly get in order to shore up some of these other divisions. The parks are doing well enough, and if Iger announces anything, he's not going to be around to see it. So little incentive for those things to actually occur. However, operational changes, I think that is almost an absolute certainty. For example, on the WDI front, and this is why I'm kind of bullish about some of those people coming back, apparently the Lake Nona deal is dead. It is gone. I'm hearing this from several sources. It's out. I think our friend Lorena Creel actually toured the site, hadn't even broke ground yet. So we pretty much know that is not going forward. And that was one of the biggest contentions for people at WDI at the time. The other thing I'm hearing is that reservations might actually be off the table, at least for ticketed guests. I hear there will be some form of an annual pass holder. A reservation system for annual pass holders and Magic Keys. So, that kind of stuff right there. We also got the updated language regarding Genie Plus, right? Where they are saying that they're going to actually cap how many that they sell per day. Now, I've had multiple conversations with you, Wizard, and OG, where it's just like, it's oversold. You cannot have 50% rates of usage on this thing. It's just, it creates a hellish experience, not just for the people who don't have it. It definitely creates a poor situation for them, but also for the people who do have it. I mean, I've seen Lightning Lane return lines as long as an hour, really. And if the attraction goes down at the end of that hour, what are you there to do? I mean, they give you a pass to come back, but now you're at the back of that hour line again at a certain point in which that ride can actually come back up. That needs to change. And I think those operational changes, right, the ones that actually don't impact the bottom line and that can be quickly implemented, expect more of those as we go along.
Yes, and the Lake Nona move, I think, is like, yeah, I think is. I'm hearing a little bit of echo. Sorry, but
no, I was trying to make a poll, so I had to go on the live on my computer to make the poll.
Okay, no problem. But I think that the Lake Nona thing is, look, if I'm Disney, right? Just being honest, you have a governor who's very hostile right now to Disney. Every campaign speech DeSantis has made, he's leading up to the election was about, oh, well, yeah, you know what, woke Disney, we're going to teach them a lesson. Well, okay, if you're Disney, and look, whether you're conservative or liberal, it doesn't really matter. But if you're Disney, from a business perspective, you have a governor who's openly hostile to you as a corporation. You're already stuck with these massive theme parks and resorts with this governor. You can't move those resorts. But why would you insert more into that equation with inserting like building an Imagineering facility? Like you're already stuck like Chuck, so you're going to add more, give DeSantis more leverage? No, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Disney doesn't want to give DeSantis more leverage. He obviously is very hostile towards Disney, so why give him one more thing that he can dangle over Disney's head? Right. So no, they're not going to do Lake Nona, because why would they? The governor isn't supporting them at all.
Yeah.
So they're not going to do that, at least not right now. Maybe eventually, maybe when DeSantis is gone, maybe when things improve politically. But right now, there's no incentive to do that. Zero.
Also, too, you know, some people have talked about the RCID thing and have kind of, argued that, oh, well, maybe Iger can smooth things over. I don't know if Governor DeSantis is going to be quelled by the fact that, one CEO is out, and this CEO has been kind of known for being the kind of, let's say, the progressive ally that has maybe ran counter to some of the politics as it relates to Florida. From what I understand, that's still going forward. The RCID will be transformed somewhat with more control by the legislature, and most notably more taxes. I mean, that is kind of the thing most at issue there, and I don't really have faith that Iger will be able to negotiate that down. Again, this was the guy who famously kicked off this whole thing by retweeting President Biden and saying, I agree with the president, Disney should take a stand on this. Also, too, remember the whole Georgia bill thing, right? Where, Iger famously says it's going to be difficult to do business in the state. Of course, that didn't really change anything, which was interesting. But again, this Iger has been, he doesn't suffer from not being the ally you needed him to be, like dear old Chapek actually said. Also, too, this is what's the other kind of thing about the RCID thing that I don't think a lot of people are talking about. So, okay, we're going to get a little political here, but I kind of have to make this point, okay? I'm sorry. Okay, all right, here we go.
Here we
All
go.
right, so, OG, I had previously referenced this on our Rumble show, right? Going into the political dynamic between DeSantis and the 45th president of the United States, right? And apparently the plan was for 45, as he just announced his candidacy for the president, to run with DeSantis on a 45 DeSantis ticket, right? Okay. Apparently that's off the table now. That deal has that deal has crumbled, right? And
Drama.
OG, we've had conversation as to why that might have been. Apparently, DeSantis endorsed a senatorial candidate in Colorado, which was anti-45, let's say. And so now DeSantis might actually be running for the presidency himself in 2024. If that is the case, he's going to be wanting to make a big statement. Right. The RCID might be that thing. This is why this all matters, is what I'm saying. Because, I mean, in 2023, in about June, right, when the kind of election season kind of gets rolling again, well, that's also when the RCID is set to actually be, what is it? Erased, right? That's the end date for it, as we know from the bill that they've already passed. So that's kind of the backdrop there, and that's why I don't think the RCID situation will change.
Well, yeah, and DeSantis has very little faith in his own legislature, because if he actually thought his legislature wasn't bought and paid for, then he wouldn't fear Disney. There'd be no problem, because the only power Disney has is with the pocketbook, with the checkbook. So DeSantis obviously feels threatened that, oh, well, my legislature can be bought by Disney writing a big enough check and influence their voting. So, yeah, he's gonna try to nip that in the bud, I think, and he's gonna do what he can.
There is a level of regulation that ever since 1968, 1 year after the RCID legislation passes in 1967, there's always been this feeling that they got a little bit too much, and the RCID has been up for discussion in the halls of Tallahassee for quite a while. And apparently this is what came to a head. This is where the political will actually drove this thing, and I think DeSantis is going to ride that momentum, and he's going to want to make a name for himself. And I think the RCID will be the thing at issue, and I don't think Iger is going to be necessarily able to stop that. Yeah,
and keep in mind, DeSantis fans, Democrats went after the RCID as well. So this is not a conservative thing necessarily. Democrats also went after this, so it's that's a thing.
Yep.
So will that mean less investment in Florida Park?
I think so. In my opinion, I think so. Why would you invest more into a state that's actively hostile to you? Why would you?
Wow. So if you have a Florida park that's hostile to you and a California mayor that's anti-mayor that's hostile to you, you might as well invest overseas.
Right. But Dre, you had a thought on this?
Well, no, I mean, look, the kind of, the level of investment I think that Walt Disney World has gotten the most of over the years is not from the theme park side, but it's actually from the hotel side. We might see a little bit less hotel investment just due to the kind of tax and regulatory changes that might come the RCID's way. So in that hand, it's like, well, if you're going to set aside a certain number of CapEx, maybe you spend that in the parks themselves. I don't know. It could have a lot of effects, but in the near future, between the RCID and Iger being only there for 2 years, so what's the incentive for him to necessarily announce anything big, right? That would just kind of reduce his amount of CapEx to apply towards other things. It's going to be some lean years. And the problem with that is, I mean, Cosmic Rewind, from what I understand, from inception to opening, that was like a 7-year process, right? We might not be getting big capital investment in the parks division, whether it be Disneyland or Walt Disney World, for like a decade. I mean, honestly, I might be in my 40s before we see something on the scale of Galaxy's Edge. I mean, that's kind of really where we're at here. It's going to take a long time.
And just so you know, Dre, the 40s ain't that bad. I'm in them, and I feel great. And even in your 40s, you'll definitely enjoy it.
Fantastic. I look forward to it.
No, but I agree with Dre. I think there is going to be like a little bit of a pullback with that. Absolutely. I just wish that these politicians, and really it's both sides, because like honestly, the crap we're seeing over in Anaheim is just as bad. We just got a new mayor elect, you know, and she's supposedly ranting and raving about how she's going to side with the residents and all this stuff. And we got DeSantis over here talking about how Disney is so woke, we can't side, you know, with them with just about anything. All these really what it boils down to is anti-business, you know. And when will both political parties understand that this company Disney fuels these local economies? Okay, and whether you're in California and you're stifling Disney because they want to build a bridge and that's going to hurt the small business, or whether you're a Republican and you're like, well, we can't let them do anything because they're too woke. At the end of the day, it's anti-business. Disney fuels the economy in both of these states, and I just wish they would both understand that. And apparently, they haven't. And maybe when things dry up a little bit, maybe Orlando and Anaheim will understand that. Once again, the point will have to be made that Disney fuels the local economy. But we'll see. I don't know.
It really is amazing because, as we know, Governor Gavin Newsom kept the theme parks closed for maybe 6 months longer than he should have, right? Yeah. I think we can all kind of agree on that. They were going to open back in the fall. Right? Yeah. They were going to open back up in the fall, but of 2020. And instead, we had to wait until April 30th, 2021, you know. And that's really unfortunate. But surprisingly, Chapek got burned bridges and got both sides of the political spectrum to be mad.
True.
That was impressive. I must say that I was not counting on.
Damn, Chapek. He's right. He's right.
There really is a mess. And by the way, we were just talking about it from to just one final note on this political front here. OG and I were talking about this kind of shifting of monies around, right? And how that could potentially open you up to inquiry. And now that the House is now it's now in the control of the other party, who has not been so keen on Disney recently. What if investigators start looking into this? This could get really, really dicey really, really fast. So hopefully, this all gets kind of quashed with Chapek walking out the door. Maybe that was the haste at which they worked there in order to make that happen. I don't know. We'll see. But I think the other thing that is most at issue here, not just the parks and so forth like that, but I think the other thing at issue is what comes next. What do we all kind of predict will happen, both with some of the outstanding product that we haven't talked about yet, and also who might we think will replace Bob Iger in the seat after these 2 years?
Maybe Mr. Staggs.
That's who I'm rooting for. Like I really hope it's Tom Staggs. Tom Staggs has proven he can be a very, very effective CFO. So he was the head Staggs was the head bean counter for many, many years at Disney. And he did a very good job at it. And then Bob Iger said, okay, you know what, Staggs? We're going to go ahead and we're going to try to groom you for the CEO position. We're going to put you ahead of the parks. And while he ran the parks, he spearheaded things like Pandora, Galaxy's Edge. And I think even Cars Land, if I'm not mistaken. Staggs really has that good understanding of how to operate on both the financial end and the creative end. I would love to have Tom Staggs. I made a tweet about it recently. I think it was yesterday, actually. I think he's the guy. I really, really do. But I don't know. We'll see. I mean, look, they were interested in him at the beginning years and years ago. For whatever reason, they decided like he wasn't the guy. So he ended up leaving. Well, recently this past summer, the Disney board reached out to Tom Staggs again and asked him, "Are you down?" And it didn't work out. But here's the thing: they're still interested. The fact that they reached out to him shows you they're still interested. So that's the guy I would personally pick. Another person I think is on the short list would be like Dana Walden, who's running like Disney Entertainment right now. She was kind of like elevated after Peter Rice got fired. I think she's definitely on the short list. Kevin Mayer, who joined Tom Staggs with Candle Media. He was with Disney for a long time. He was kind of the architect and the ghostwriter, the behind the scenes guy for a lot of these acquisitions like Pixar, Marvel, Lucasfilm. I think he's definitely on that short list because he was on the short list even right up until Chapek got like announced, right? So I think those are the three people that, in my opinion, I think we're kind of dealing with right now. It's going to be Tom Staggs, Kevin Mayer, or Dana Walden. Peter Rice also, you can't really like
Rule him out.
Rule him out. Yeah, because look, Chapek fired him unceremoniously, but Bob Iger likes Peter Rice, and I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back and he's a candidate. But what do you think, Dre? What are your thoughts? So, CEO, where do you think they're going to go with this?
Well, as you noted, Tom Staggs was the guy being set up for the CEO position. There we go. Apparently, and that process had actually begun back in like 2009 when Bob Iger announces he's going to make the switch. Jay Rasulo, the head of Parks at the time, and Tom Staggs, the CFO at the time, they were going to switch roles, right? And in January of 2010, that actually occurs. And we'll see which one thrives in each respective role here. And we'll actually see who makes it out of here. And it became evident outside of some foibles, right, with My Magic Plus and so forth, and that rollout in Florida. Tom Staggs really did thrive in the role. Made a lot of great decisions. Made a lot of things actually happen. And so he was the clear choice. Now, I didn't actually know this at the time, but apparently, I was always told that Ike Perlmutter was the guy that shot Tom Staggs down. That he was making the argument that Tom Staggs didn't have any relationships in Hollywood, so he didn't. He was unqualified to actually run Disney. And to Ike's credit, that's kind of an important aspect, which is why they went with Chapek, right? Didn't quite work out, right? But Iger was really in a bind because now he had to start from square one. Now, what I didn't know about that whole interaction there was Ike may have been motivated to actually do that. Why? Because apparently he was still upset about the reorganizational structure of Marvel and Kevin Feige specifically reporting to Bob Iger without Ike Perlmutter in between. Apparently he did not take kindly to that. So he develops a relationship with an alliance, right, with Steve Jobs' widow, who at that point was the largest private shareholder at Disney, and they both worked to take Tom Staggs off the board in terms of a potential CEO candidate. And Iger was really kind of caught in a bind because he had to start all over again. And it looked like Kevin Mayer was actually going to be that guy. Apparently, it was then Chapek, and Kevin Mayer left shortly thereafter. Now, both of them could conceivably be up for discussion here. And apparently, I think one of the things that kind of was the sticking point between all of this was Candlelight would have had to be purchased. Yeah. And apparently that was a no-go because Chapek would have had to sign off on that deal. But if that actually happens, where this media group is actually acquired by Disney, look out for that because that will signal where they're going. And to be honest, it's 2 years. Remember, between when Staggs walks out and he's placed in the Parks position, that's like 5 years. Iger only has 2. There's going to be a limited amount of people who can actually be developed for the role. Staggs and Mayer are very intimately they've been intimately involved with Disney before. They know how the place runs. They're a good decent people to slot into the role.
Yeah, 100%. And TS Wade too had a comment in here saying, "I don't know if Tom Staggs is interested. I've heard he was asked and declined." Now, TS Wade, I wouldn't put much weight into like, oh, well, they were asked and they declined.
Yeah.
Look, if you remember, it wasn't too long ago that Bob Iger was asked, would he return to Disney? And he said, absolutely not.
No,
That's
never. You can't go back home again.
You can't go back home. That's ridiculous. I'm done. I'm in retirement mode. And here we are. Here we are again with Bob Iger as CEO. So this whole idea that like, oh, well, Tom Staggs rejected the offer. You know what? Doesn't really matter. Money talks. Yeah, money talks. They can make a deal. They can sweeten the deal.
Iger has a way of sweetening that stuff too. This is why they kind of feel that he might be able to smooth out things with the RCID, right? Because he is the deal maker, right? He's the kind of negotiator, and to everybody's credit, he is, right?
Yeah.
That situation might be different, but when it comes to Tom Staggs, he can be very convincing, and so I let's not. I mean, again, all of these kind of things are long shots, of course, and stuff, and it's going to take, some extraordinary things to happen to actually make them occur. But, don't write them off so easily. Right. Nobody thought Iger was going to be in the head seat until about 6 o'clock on Sunday. So, it can happen.
Exactly. A week ago today, if last Saturday, we were all having this conversation, and I were to ask you fellas, what do you think the chances are that Bob Iger would end up be CEO tomorrow, and Chapek would be fired? And I think everybody, myself included, and you gentlemen, and everyone watching would go,
zero.
There's no fucking chance.
Zero.
He's zero. Goose egg. He's not coming back. Well, he did come back. Sunday night last week, he came back. So this whole notion of like, Tom Staggs said no. It doesn't really matter. A lot of political candidates, by the way, say no all the time. They tell you, I'm not running. And then I'm running, right? They do this. Yes. This is what they do.
And sometimes it's for a negotiator. It's part of the negotiative process, right? Where, it's like, I'm not interested. It will take so much to get me interested. Which, by the way, I think it was pretty telling that Iger, he took less money than what was expected of him. And that tells me he was expecting that phone call, right? He wanted that one to hit his his cell phone, I guess. But also too, it tells me that he's not necessarily motivated by money.
I agree with this statement.
Right. And that's why they wanted kind of a dual role Tom Staggs, Kevin Meyer situation.
Right. Yeah. And Dre, to your credit, we talked about this last night. You were talking about this. Like, why don't they bring back kind of a joint CEO situation? And if you purchase Candle Media, you can get that joint CEO situation because you would inherit both Staggs and Kevin Meyer. Both are Disney veterans. Both have been around the block. Both know what they're doing. Now, I will say this. Kevin Meyer lost a little bit of credibility, in my opinion, when the first move he made outside of leaving Disney was getting involved with fucking TikTok. Okay, whoops. Fine. Kevin, you made a mistake. It's all good. But you know what? We can forgive you. Come on back with Tom Staggs and we'll call it a day.
Yeah, we'll call it even.
Candle Media, I believe, because I think Dre was showing me, they're the owners of, or the producer of Coco Melon, right? So if they bought that and Coco Melon's on Disney Plus, that would be a big boon for Disney Plus. I'm just saying. Saying.
True.
Because you see Coco Melon's always in the top 10 on Netflix, like every week for like years. That is a juggernaut, that thing. So not only will they get 2 CEO candidates, they get Coco Melon, which will just
now what
Disney Plus.
Mind me, because I'm super old. What is Coco Melon?
So Coco Melon's it's like a nursery rhyme baby show, but it's always in the top 10. It's always in there on Netflix every time, it seems like. And there must be a lot of kids watching that thing that maybe don't have Disney Plus. They can switch on over, all those families. It would decrease churn. It would be great. Coco Melon is very valuable. Super valuable. I don't watch it, but I always see it. That's how I know what it was, because I always see it in the top 10.
We can get a little content for Disney Plus. We can get a couple of CEO candidates. It's great. It's great. It all works out. It all
works out.
But look out for that deal, guys. I'm telling you, that's gonna be. He's looking at one, or maybe even both of them.
If Disney makes a move, and we're talking about Bob Iger here, the acquisition king. If Bob Iger makes a move, if Disney makes a move on Candle Media, Tom Staggs and Kevin Meyer are the guys. It's confirmed. At that point, even without the announcement, I'm convinced. So we'll see.
Now, speaking of the acquisition king, one of the funnier stories that I just. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, it's definitely up for Palpatine for sure. There are some strings being pulled, let's say. No, very much so. But one of the very interesting things that I heard recently about the acquisition king thing was that apparently this Global Dream cruise liner was Chapek's way of having some acquisitions under his belt, right? Hey, I bought a cruise liner for pennies on the dollar. Wall Street, look at me. I can make deals too.
I gotta make the acquisition.
Apparently, the guys at DCL or Disney Cruise Line were not too thrilled about that, and they had actually told Chapek no initially. Well, obviously, it's Chapek's call to make, but apparently they're not so thrilled with this Asian cruise liner built for an entirely different purpose, actually being folded in to Disney's fleet here. So maybe we see something there. Obviously, there's going to be a kill fee for that and so forth. But look out for that as part of these kind of more immediate changes. I still think it's a good deal, but yeah, it's out with the old and with the new,
Well, I agree with you. I think that cruise ship, which is actually kind of like supposed to be based out of Asia, look, it's like already like half built or something, and it's a mega, right? I don't know. I think Chapek made the right decision on that. Buy it, and they really made the move like almost like at the right time, because it was like enough along in the process where like Disney didn't have to fit the bill for like the building of the ship, but like not far enough where like it's not too late to add that Disney cruise kind of element to it. I think this was really one of the smartest moves Team Chapek made, and I think it'd be foolish not to go down that road. I really do. And then now you have a ship based in Asia. You can dock that thing over, like I don't know the logistics, but maybe you can dock that thing over not too far from like Tokyo Disney Resort, maybe even China, like Shanghai or Hong Kong or something. You have a cruise line ship for that Asian market,
right?
I don't know. I think it's a great idea, and honestly, I would be kind of disappointed if they backed out of that deal. I think it's a smart move. I think that was a good move on Chapek's part.
The lead time for steel right now, it's like 3 times the weight that it used to be, maybe even more than that. I mean, it's a long time.
Right.
The price for steel has fluctuated wildly. They get to basically buy this thing pennies on the dollar and just, like you said, just take that 25% right there that needs to be completed and really do those, magic touches, that Disney's known for. I still think this was a pretty good deal here.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Some of these things are kind of, with Iger, some of it's ego driven, right?
Yeah.
But the other thing too, and this is where we have to kind of set expectations for what comes in the future, because I heard a lot of people say, "Oh, I can't wait to see what happens with the Parks division and so forth." And it's like, yes, that's true. They're
change tomorrow. It's crazy,
right? Yeah, it's people were expecting all kinds of things. It's like, look, guys, be realistic, okay? Big investments, I don't see. Now, I do see. Maybe like a show in the Hyperion returning. That is absolutely on the table. Maybe DCA getting its parade back, also on the table.
Paint the night, please.
Paint the night, maybe. Iger he understands what the fans want,
right,
and what will signal change, right? And that's a very kind of straightforward thing to actually do.
Right.
So we can kind of see that kind of stuff, but let's to be honest here, the real focus is going to be those relationships in Hollywood, right? And that's why within 24 hours of this thing actually going live with Chapek taking the seat again, he gets rid of Kareem Daniel. That is a signal to all of Hollywood, we're open for business again, right? And that's why he had that memo to the Disney Media and Entertainment Distribution Division, right? He's telling you, I'm going to reorganize this in a way that empowers creatives once again, and we're going to, reestablish the relationships that we had cultivated and lost. After ScarJo, they really did take a hit in terms of talent coming in the Mouse House. And I absolutely believe that Iger wants to rectify that, and that might take up all of his tenure, honestly.
Well, and that's the thing too. This Iger move is like these 2 years that he'll be there, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is about kind of like setting the foundation, not so much about individual projects. It's about kind of just basically reestablishing a foundation so the next CEO is properly equipped to move forward.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's going to mend relationships with Hollywood. He's going to mend relationships with Imagineering. He's going to do what he can to sort of get the ship back on course. But if you're hoping that he's going to, Bob Iger's going to announce a new Tomorrowland at Disneyland, that's not really what he's here for.
No.
He's here for more of a broader sort of like foundational thing, and I think that's kind of the direction he's going in. So yeah, I think people will be disappointed if they're looking like Iger to go in there and like, now he's gonna fix Tomorrowland. I wouldn't go that far. He wants to set people up, the executives up for success going forward. That's really all he's doing right now. So we'll see. I don't know. I'm cautiously look. Matthew Murr says. He's cautiously optimistic. I'm right there with you, Matthew. I'm cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
I think Iger will mend relationships. I think that Iger will sort of stop the bleeding.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think he's going to go in there and start announcing like a third park for Disneyland and a new Tomorrowland and a fifth park for Florida. That's not why he's there. Not at all.
And to kind of put this into a different context, right? I mean, a lot of people are looking forward towards the paint scheme and the changing out of the interior. And it's like, what colors are we going to get? And it's like, you understand you have a cracked piston, right? Like that is the more important thing, right? And that's kind of what it's going to be all about there. It's like you said, Ochi, it's very foundational things, very much to set the next CEO up as best that he can, and not, having him to basically reestablish these relationships as they were kind of damaged, let's say, from the Chapek era. That ScarJo thing is still, even though they quashed that with ScarJo herself, it was a real big signal across Hollywood. It was like, maybe this isn't the place to actually take my talent or, produce content actually for. So that's a real big thing right there, and I'm sure it's one of the mandates from the board as well.
Yeah, Hollywood is open for business, and I think Imagineering, had taken a huge hit with Chapek, and I think that a lot of these Imagineers, now we're not going to get everyone back, obviously, but I think that there is a possibility now with Bob Iger back that some of these Imagineers, some of these celebrity Imagineers might come back into the fold. We'll see. I mean, that's just a guess, but it's possible. Go ahead, Wizard.
My strategy, look, because you've lost so many people, just get the big contract to Joe Rohde, have him come back, and have everybody else attracted like flies to honey. Okay, that is the smart move there, because you're never going to convince all of them to come back. But if you convince a big name like that to come back, now you have attention drawn to you. So I think that's the move. Sorry, Wizard, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'd say, you need that talent or some talent, because we got to fix stuff like this here, right here. This is terrible.
Oh, woo! Hey, I will say this was a movie approved under Iger. Let's just remember that, folks.
Mm-hmm.
True.
We need that talent back, because we can't. Come on, this is like one of the worst animated openings of all time for Disney. We can't have them be like this. How can we fix this?
This
Right.
this is. Go ahead, OG.
I,
OG.
the issue with this is that it just didn't look like a good movie.
No.
The trailers didn't inspire anybody.
No.
It didn't look good. And people were like, I don't want to see it. Just like in the early 2000s when they watched the trailer for Atlantis or watched the trailer for Home on the Range or Chicken Little,
Yeah.
trailers just didn't look good. So no one gave a shit to go watch them. Strange World fits in that category. It's very much an Atlantis Home on the Range kind of tier animated film. And again, the result was the same. People didn't show up. Disney Animation, now we have Pixar. Disney Animation should really stick with what it is known for. Every resurgence, every kind of energizing force within this animation studio has always come from going kind of back to what Disney is based on, whether it be Tangled back in 2010, whether it be The Little Mermaid back in 1989. Disney Animation needs to get back to its roots, start making fairy tales, start making whimsical musicals again. That's what people want from Disney Animation. If you want to branch out, that's fine, but that's why you have Pixar to do those more modern stories, right? So now you have another studio that can do all that. But for Disney Animation, people want to see the fairy tales. They want to see whimsy. They want to see musicals. And every time that Disney Animation has kind of received new life, it's always been from one of those movies. These kind of movies don't necessarily do well under Disney Animation, under that banner. They just don't. And here we go again. They're trying this now, a sci-fi freaking movie, and it's flopping.
I mean, this was and the problem with that too, OG, when you're talking about films that kind of are developed under the Disney Animated Studios banner, right? That are not kind of these traditional kind of fantastical films that we've seen them do before, right? It kind of muddies the water between Pixar and Disney Animation Studios. There's this kind of really like push from outsiders to kind of like say like, why do we have two animated studios who look exactly the same? Like what shouldn't we just make them one? Apparently that was kind of there was a thing that could have really happened, actually. That was kind of gaining momentum even inside the company. But this just shows you right here. I mean, look, and if you're going to experiment, okay, you cannot spend $180 million. I mean, what? And look, Kareem Daniel just got what is it? He just got shown the door, right? But I do think he was maybe correct in evaluating this film when it came to its potential, right? I think it was testing kind of negatively internally, right? We just saw that it actually got a B grade cinema score, and I do think Disney was kind of seeing that,
which is worse than horror movies.
That to put that into perspective, folks, this is the lowest rated Disney animated film in the studio's history ever. Right? Every single one has gotten either an A- or an A+, right? Nothing has actually hit B, and this is what this is. So I think it's like, okay, this is a big cost, right? Which is just alarming that it was 180 million. I've heard as high as 200 million, actually. And so I think Kareem Daniel made the right choice, and like, we're not going to sink good money after bad by marketing this film. And so I think with some of that cost containment, I don't think it necessarily has to make as much money to actually make its money back as some of these other films that we've seen from the studio, whether it be live action or animated. I don't think it has to make that much, anywhere between $600 to $700 million probably. But it's not even going to come anywhere close to that, and it's still going to be a huge drag. I mean, it is projected to open like 19 million.
19 million
this
now,
weekend. 5 days.
5 days, 19
so
million.
bad.
And Kanto during a more COVID time did double that, only here for 30 days. This year, Minions: Rise of Gru, say one of the Minions. I love the Minions, but they got almost to $1 billion, right?
And the Minions was made for far less than this was. That's the other important thing to note here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was made for far less. It only got $2 billion, and I mean, yeah, this is just horrible.
It's
I don't
horrible.
I don't even want to watch it on Disney Plus because it's just
I would-
so bad.
I think Minions has a budget of like
I was
85 million.
I was just telling Dre the same thing actually this morning on the phone. I don't even want to watch it on Disney Plus. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit about this movie. I'm sorry, I don't. And I honestly, I don't even give a shit about the Minions. I'll be real with you.
And
but
the
at least the Minions are making money.
Exactly,
And-
it's the Minions are making money.
But those Minions merch sales, by the way, that is a thing too. So that's the other part of this. Strange World ain't
Right.
gonna make no money, whether it's at the theaters, physical media, merchandise, ancillary sales. It ain't gonna do jack. And this is gonna be a drag here. And I think this is why Chapek was like, I better get this this S in gear, right? And even Iger, to his credit, even he's talking about when he sends out that memo to DMED, included in there is we're gonna, make cost-effective choices, right? We're going to kind of streamline here. You got to get these budgets under control. And apparently, Chapek was in the process of doing that himself. Unfortunately, though, for Chapek, apparently he was pissing off Kevin Feige a little bit there, too. Not with the necessarily bigger films, because I think even Kevin Feige understood that some of those budgets can be reined in a little bit as well. But apparently it was some of these smaller films, like some of these animated series that were going to be directly released onto Disney+. Apparently those were at issue. And I guess Kareem Daniel and Kevin Feige, they argued about it a little bit. From Kareem Daniel's perspective, he was saying that you got to be kind of a team player here. We're going to see the whole company kind of go through cuts. We'd like you to set an example. And Feige was just like, I can get an animated show, though, content for the platform for only tens of millions of dollars. This is a very limited investment here. Why are we necessarily cutting this? And when you have Zaslav making a run at Kevin Feige like he did, and Susan Arnold is getting word from both that conversation and from the conversation with Zaslav, I think it was like, we can't lose a Feige. And so another reason to have Chapek exit.
No, you can't lose a Feige. And Dre, we talked about this on our channel, like on OG55 a lot. Like once you piss off Feige, Chapek is freaking done. Now here's the other thing too. In terms of David Zaslav, this guy fanboys for Bob Iger every time he gets on the quarterly earnings. Let's be honest, he does.
We want an Iger you want a 10-year plan.
It's so funny to hear him.
Right. He fanboys constantly for Bob Iger. If there's anyone who's more nervous about Iger coming back, is David Zaslav.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I mean, he has tried to emulate their style from the Iger heydays, in many aspects of what they do. Which, look, if Zaslav hasn't run a movie studio before, I guess, follow from the best, right? But now with Iger back in the door, this is definitely going to be interesting to see these juxtaposition of styles in this new era. I think Iger, some people were saying that the world is different now, and it absolutely is. And honestly, I don't think anybody knows that more quite like Iger does, being removed from Disney and actually, being among friends and colleagues and so forth. I think it has opened up a little bit of a change of perspective to him. And I think he will change his style as per necessary for these different times. So it's going to be interesting to see how he differs from the Iger of the past with all of this, backdrop being so different from those highs back in 2015, 16 and so forth, right? That's going to be interesting to see that juxtaposition right there. But also too, I was making this point to OG. The great thing about Walt Disney was he knew talent. He recognized people's ability even before they even entered into the space. There's this great story of Exitensio and how he was a script writer, right? Or he was some kind of maybe dabbled in the technical space, right? For the studio, and what is it? Walt Disney. He sees that and he goes, "You know what? You'd be great in Imagineering in this role." And it's like, I've never done this before. And he's like, "Oh, you do great in it." And Nick Satencio obviously writes the great lyrics for "Yo Ho Yo Ho." It's Power Life for Me, and also Grim Grinning Ghosts. He writes those the kind of scripts for those attractions. Does the recording for all of those. So he was instrumental in both of those. But he had never done it before that, and he just knew. I believe it was Roger Brogy who Walt kind of understood that's like, maybe don't go with this guy because he's not necessarily as reliable as some of these other Imagineers that we actually have, like Bob Gurr and so forth. And he knew that too. He could actually predict that, because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that was the guy. If I'm not mistaken, he was the guy that did the shark for Jaws, which had all of those infamous problems, right? Walt Disney predicted that from him, 20, 30 years before that actually happens, which is incredible. He knew, right? He also knew Ward Kimball, hey, great animator, maybe not necessarily a great Imagineer. And so when the company did put Ward Kimball in a role in Imagineering, he didn't do so well. So it was all of these things. Walt Disney was he was so phenomenal in picking people, putting people in key positions, and having them execute. The opposite of that is kind of Bob Iger when you really think about it, right? I mean, he is a guy who has bought talent, right? People that were succeeding well at their roles, keeping them in their roles, maybe spreading them around a little bit, but a lot of people that he himself picked, not excluding Chapek himself, a couple of those studio heads right before Alan Horn is actually placed in that position,
right?
They didn't do so well. So that's kind of the interesting thing. The board wants Bob Iger as CEO to pick his successor, but he has not done that so well regarding any number of positions, including the CEO position beforehand.
No, he hasn't. He hasn't been really good at picking talent. He inherited Kevin Feige. He let go of John Lasseter, which, look, I'm not diminishing like the situation around John Lasseter, but I don't know. I mean, in terms of, like, if we're gonna talk about like John Lasseter and like what he did in comparison to other executives who got fired for the Me Too situation, I don't think that John Lasseter was as egregious as terrible as some of these other guys are. You know, he look, there were other ways. Basically, what I'm saying is they could have handled John Lasseter without letting him go completely. Is all I'm saying. You know, he was not Harvey Weinstein. That's all I'm saying. You know, Kathleen Kennedy. Now, granted, Kathleen Kennedy was chosen by George Lucas, but Bob Iger didn't fire her. Like, you should have fired her. Like, after Solo, that should have been it. Iger, like, that's it, man. Like, let her go. Like, it was enough already. He didn't fire her. Dre mentioned there were multiple Disney Studios heads prior to Alan Horn that failed abysmally. Yeah. I mean, really, like, just took it like horrible.
No,
okay,
not good. Yeah,
every single person, Chapek appointing him or recommending him to the board to be the CEO was a terrible decision. I can't think of a single person outside of Alan Horn that was a successful hire from Bob Iger. I cannot think of a single person.
Well, and Alan Horn had a pedigree that was a mile long. So it was like, okay, well, you just slotting them in. I'm just going to convince him to come out of retirement. By the way, not Roger Brogy, it was Bob Matty. Just want to go ahead and clarify there. But from the story before. It's like a lot of the guys that he kind of stuck in these key positions right here didn't necessarily pan out. And that's why he kind of became the acquisition king, because he was like, well, you know what? Let's just shortcut this and just bring in people to the fold who we know will execute. And he did, and to his great credit, that was a strong move in understanding maybe some of his deficiencies, right, in actually choosing talent and putting people in key positions. To make those moves, good on him for sure. This is why I'm kind of like, would he do a Skydance animation deal? It's conceivably possible. A lot of people who made the best of the Iger years actually occur are over there right now. So I don't know. Possibly, if you want to set up success for the next CEO, I wouldn't put it past Iger from actually approaching that in some way. Anyway, but yes, so it's this kind of interesting situation where
Yeah.
you have a guy who is kind of been responsible for a lot of the shortcomings of Disney in recent years. Obviously, not made better by Chapek, but certainly, he was able to tread water enough to get them this far. And you have that guy now making this key decision here. I don't know. I if I'm the board, I'm looking over that shoulder quite a bit and seeing how this is going to go down.
And they should, and they absolutely should, and that's why I made that tweet. And people were like, kind of like one person was like mocking me for it, right? But I made that tweet about like
Disney person.
it was a crazy, kind of a crazy Disney person. Yeah, he was kind of a weenie. I got to be honest. He was kind of a weenie.
He was kind of a weenie, wasn't he?
Right. But here's the thing. That's why when I make a tweet and I tag Bob Iger, I'm not seriously thinking like, oh, well, he's going to listen to OG. Like I'm nobody. He doesn't give a fuck about me. I get that. But if I make the tweet and I let him know this is what fans are feeling, we want Tom Staggs, and then I get a bunch of likes and a bunch of retweets, yeah, it might not, like, obviously he's not going to be like, oh, well, OG made a tweet and he got a bunch of likes, therefore that's the CO. Obviously, I'm not under any delusion that that's going to happen. But right now is a time as fans that we can sort of let Iger know where we stand. He wants to please the fans. He wants to kind of mend his legacy right now. Yeah. Now's the time to strike and to let him know, because now's the time he's very open. We're seeing that with the 9 a.m. town hall meeting at the Disney Studios on Monday. He wants to hear from fans. He wants to hear from cast members. Mm-hmm. So right now is the time to be constructive, fandom. We spent 3 years fucking bitching about Bob Chapek and everything. Well, now's the time. We have a new CEO now. Now's the time you can have your voice heard. And you have a guy who's very receptive right now because he wants to be liked. He wants to change the direction of the company. Now is the time to strike when the iron's hot and to let him know who we want. And that's why I made that tweet, not to gain YouTube clout. I don't care about YouTube clout. If I cared about YouTube clout, I would have been on the anti-Chapek train a long time ago, because that's where the money's at. I don't care about the money. I don't care about the clout. I want Disney to do better. And the best way for Disney to do better is to let Bob Iger know, hey, you know what? This is the guy that we think you looked over and stepped over. And this is the guy that we think might be the best for the job. And at least at the very minimum, consider him. That's all we're asking. And consider him.
Constructive criticism as well. Some of these guys, whether they're a hated Chapek or whatever, or a beloved Daddy Josh, both of them will make mistakes and both of them will do good. And that's what we were recognizing. And we were, maybe contrarian in that approach, but we were that for a reason, because everybody else would tell you that Chapek is the worst thing ever. And it's very interesting how a lot of these articles are going with that narrative, right? Or they're furthering that narrative that, oh, Chapek was the big bad guy and he was horrible for the company and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, it's not nearly as black and white as that. A lot of those decisions were foisted on Chapek. A lot of the movies were greenlit by Iger when he was the head of creative in those roles and so forth. So let's not get it twisted here, folks. There's a narrative out there. There's an agenda out there that's being peddled right now. And look, I don't really care. The only agenda that I have is to see this company do be as successful as it possibly can, but in the right way. And I will fully admit that Chapek didn't necessarily do that in the right way all the time. And unfortunately, maybe he was the wrong guy when it came to what, as Iger would say, the soul of the company, right? And I told people this before. I said, look, he's the best guy to have now, maybe not the best guy to have later, right? Exactly. Because of all the turmoil that was going on, not just within the company, but also, with the world and so forth. It's like, look, this is the guy that you want to get you through these hard times, but maybe you go somewhere else later on down the line. We're here at that point. So just want to make that abundantly clear to people. But look, listen, I think people are kind of getting into this mode where it's like, they have the wish lists right online. And I do agree that's like you said, OG, it's good to have those things, but let's just set expectations, right?
Right.
This is not kind of everything's chugging along, burning, great growth mode, right? This is excellent, awesome. We're still kind of in survival mode here. I think Bob Iger will need to address some of these in a manner that maybe he hadn't done before, and that people are not necessarily keen on having. But you need to address some of these problems, these fundamental issues.
Yeah,
Now,
and Matt,
I'm saying, this is a good question here.
yeah,
Because I don't know what type of people is talking about, but it makes me think of the Twitter people. Like, I never see them talking about who the next CEO should be.
No.
Or that they're talking about the latest popcorn bucket or what's so bad with the Genie Pluses. So if Matthew, this is talking about Twitter people, I'll say 0 because they don't even talk about it. But I hope a lot of people recommend Stags. And that's the thing, these Twitter people, they just say this is bad and this is bad and this, but they should have some forward thinking. Like, I like you say, or put some tweets out for Stags, and if a whole bunch of people do it and like it and retweet it, then it gains traction. Then who knows, But they're too complaining about the lightning lane to even think about it.
Yeah, well, that's the problem with like as you say, Ethan, these crazy Disney people. They don't care. They don't think 2 minutes beyond their experience with Genie Plus. That's the problem. It's like, yes, like think beyond your experience right now. Okay, I get it, Magic Key Holder. You had to wait an extra 10 minutes in your Genie Plus, Lightning Lane, or whatever. I get that. It sucks. I understand that. But if you're going to bitch and moan about Bob Chapek and you think he's the worst thing ever, then what are your ideas? Who do you think would be a better CEO? Why don't you be a little constructive on social media and tag Bob Iger in a respectful way and let him know who you think would be a good choice? Because everyone on his Twitter is quick to criticize and hate on the current CEO and the current Disney Parks person and this, that, and the other, but they never, ever, ever have a solution. And that drives me freaking crazy. And Matthew Murr here says, how many people have recommended Stags? I worry too few might have struck with Aaron Hot. Yeah, you're actually right, Matthew. There's not many people, and Ethan has said it, not many people on Diz Twitter that will ever bring up a solution or they don't do. Here's the thing about Diz Twitter. They don't do solutions. It's all about bitching and moaning on Twitter, never having an end in sight. And I am very much solution based. And that's why the Chapek thing drove me nuts, because it was bald man bad. He sucks. He's the worst. But no one ever had a solution. What was the end game though, fandom? Where do you want to go with this? Can we be constructive and try to figure this out together? No, we just want to bitch and moan on Twitter, and that's the end of it. Well, I want solutions. I want what's best for the Walt Disney Company. I want to move forward. I don't want to just bitch and moan on Twitter. I'm tired of that.
These things they work too. If you're the constructive criticism, I will restore or release the Snyder Cut hashtag worked after it trended for so long, and look, we got the they got the Snyder Cut. So maybe if they just band it together and actually said something constructive for once, made a hashtag, we want Tom Stags, we want whoever they decide, or even we want Chapek fire. So something, instead of saying, oh my goodness, and look at this, and look at this lightning lane line, it just goes all the way out to the Cars lane. What am I gonna do now? Like, they don't offer any solution. It's so annoying. Then they complain about every tiny thing. Even sometimes it gets to like the boy who cried wolf, or sometimes maybe you shouldn't complain about that thing when there's something bigger you should complain about. And then no one listens to you complain about everything, and it's so frustrating.
Well, Ethan, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, and we know this. We know that Disney thinks that the R fan community is insane.
Chapek said it as much.
He said it.
Chapek said it as much, and so did Kim Irvine in the Imagineering story when she was saying she was getting literal death threats and all kinds of harassment over adding IP to Small World. Fandom, that's not the way you're going to affect change. We look like lunatics, and you wonder why they don't listen to you?
Yeah. No, it's crazy. I mean, there's some people on Diz Twitter who can't help themselves. And look, it's gonna get likes, gonna clicks, gonna get shares, all that, and there's an incentive to doing that, right? It's for that dopamine hit. I get it, I understand, but I mean, guys, if you're not putting forward anything constructive, what is the incentive to listen to you? I mean, if it's all a bald man bad, why should bald man even look your way, kind of thing, right? So that's kind of the real issue there. Like for example, and there's some people who actually come up with constructive things. Like Haston, for example, I think he came up with a solution.
Him.
I like
he
him.
Never says anything horrible, and if he does, he always offers something like maybe they should do this instead.
Genie Plus, for example, right? He said, well, hey, maybe we could have like 3 free fast passes or lightning lanes, right? And then after, the third one, you have to buy into the program in order to get a full day of those. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's kind of good. It's kind of a mixture of some of those things. I like that.
People are just like, Genie Plus, I don't want nothing. None of them got to hate it.
Yeah, and it's now. This is why I come on the show, and I just don't complain about it. I say, hey, here's the problem, right? I'll list it down, and it's like, okay, well, here's a potential solution. Okay, well, maybe you should increase the price in order to make it a little bit less accessible, or have a hard cap or something like that in order to kind of facilitate a better guest experience. There are ways you can go about this. Right. It's important to be constructive. And look, I will say, I mean, Bob Iger, I think, and this is something that Chapek never really understood, whereas, like, the fanatics, at least from the park side, are kind of your biggest brand advocates. So when they're happy, they're evangelizing about their experience to others, and they're not only, repping the brand when it comes to the theme parks, but also to other areas of the company, both retail and the films and so forth. They really kind of get that stuff churning. So when they're very unhappy, as we have seen with the Chapek era, that's kind of it's not the same dynamic there. And I think Iger, to his credit, does understand that a little bit more. Like, okay, like I always heard it for a long time. During the Iger era, we don't want to be nakedly greedy. And I always thought that was kind of weird. I was like, yeah, but you kind of are in some respects. But then Chapek turned that up to 11, and it was like, oh, I kind of understand this a little bit better right here, right? And the bad will that was generated, it kind of permeated throughout, right? Yeah. And I think Bob Iger is kind of like, okay, we can push, but maybe not that far, that fast, right? There's kind of a goodwill, bad will, morale, and that actually reverberates across the marketplace and also to cast members as well. So I think Iger is intimately aware, which is why we're saying constructively criticize, and maybe you'll be heard.
100%, right? And 100%. And here's the thing too, is like when you, and I had this experience on my first time Disney cruise. Okay. I was on the Disney Wonder, and the destination was Cabo, Mexico, which Cabo, beautiful, freaking gorgeous. I mean, unbelievably beautiful. But we stop at the Cabo port, and we step off into this little like shopping center, right? And we're immediately struck with like people trying to like, oh, let me sell you this. Oh, let me sell you that. Oh, what about this? Well, come into my store. Come into my store. Come into my store. Uh-huh. Okay, so that's the Bob Chapek kind of model, right? It's like that kind of aggressive, kind of a sales tactic. Now, for me personally, that doesn't work on me. That makes me push back. If I walk into your store and you're constantly hitting me with, you should buy this, or what about this, or what about that, I just want to leave. I feel uncomfortable. I don't even want to shop there anymore. Mm-hmm. But if you come in there and just give me a smile and say, hey, welcome, do shop, do your thing, I'm much more inclined to buy something. And I think Bob Iger, like when you said, Dre, to your point, nakedly greedy. When you're nakedly greedy and you're like, buy something, it turns people off. Yeah. But if you're a little bit more, you back off, you try to attract flies with honey, you're more successful in getting people to give over their money. And I think that's kind of what it comes down to, is like Iger understands like, hey, if I'm going to run a store, I'm not going to attack you when you walk in. Hey, you know what? Welcome to the store. Shop around. Do your thing. If you need me, I'm over here, but I'm going to leave you alone. Chapek didn't understand that. Chapek is the guy that, like, when I got off of Cabo, buy this, buy that. What about this? Come on, buddy. What about this? That turns people off. It makes people pull back and not want it anymore. And it's a problem.
Yeah, it's the constant, the constant sales technique, right? It's the constant in your face, upcharges and so forth. I think some of that will be reined in just a little bit. Hey,
Yeah.
maybe instead of a 75 to 25% ratio when it comes to mobile order windows and actually walk-up windows, maybe that gets reassessed a little bit, right? Because
Right.
we know
That's
that's a
really
guest dissatisfier.
That's like super easy. You just gotta change the signs on that one.
Yeah,
Take
yeah.
it more interesting and easy. You can do like tomorrow. Just boop 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 boop. All right.
Well, it takes a couple more cast members, right, in order to facilitate
Yeah, oh,
those
yeah,
cashiers
yeah.
and so forth.
Yeah.
So, but no, you're right though. I mean, that's a very kind of easier change to facilitate. Let's say.
Right.
Hey, maybe I think a big one that I think a lot of people would like was the return of Magical Express. Right. I can see Bob Iger working on a deal with Mears just for the 2 years, just to say, hey, let's make something happen here, and kind of ingratiate that goodwill again and keep that churn in there. There are a number of things that you can do, and I think that I think Iger is all about the splashy moves, and I can see a few of those going through within the next couple of months, especially as we ramp up to the 100th anniversary.
Oh, 100%. He's all about the splash moves. If you remember, the first time he took over as CEO, one of the first moves he made was to get Oswald back, which was a huge kind of olive branch to the fandom. Hey, look, I'm on your side. We got Oswald back, right?
Yeah.
And then he went for Pixar. Oh, another one, right? Tugged on the heartstrings. So he's going to do moves like that again, fandom. He's going to do moves like that again. I'm calling it now. OG is calling it right now. I'm telling you, he's going to get rid of that reservation system. There's no money. There's no money attached to that. There's no revenue stream. He's going to get rid of that reservation system. He knows it's an easy, effective way to kind of like win fans over. Now, Genie Plus, I don't think that's going anywhere because that's a revenue stream. So probably going to keep that. But that reservation system, dead man walking. He's probably going to get rid of that.
I've heard the GSAT, or the guest satisfaction on that. The GSAT metric on that is horrible. Like, the reservation system is not popular at all, and apparently that was in the works even when Chapek was actually in the hot seat. Apparently they had come to an agreement and an understanding that they were going to slowly phase that out, starting after Thanksgiving. But now Iger can go ahead and do it under his own terms and be lauded as the hero for that. So that's kind of how that cookie crumbles.
Do you have that applause sound effect, Ray, for that hero moment?
I do.
Sure.
There you go, right?
There you go, Bob Iger.
That's what's going to happen when he announces that, I can assure you. Everybody's going to thank Iger, and it's going to be this big old thing, even though Chapek was working towards that end. And to be honest, it was a way to facilitate. It was a way to facilitate the cast and shortages and so forth. Now that's no longer as big of an issue as it was. Park hopping time would be So that's the other thing I've heard as well, that will also be adjusted. That the park hopping for ticketed guests, right? Just like the difference between them and APs. Ticketed guests, I think, will be eliminated completely, if I'm not mistaken. And then for APs and Magic Keys, that time will be pushed up. That's what I'm hearing. Again, it's slow rolling it, but I think that will be addressed as well.
Now, I just want to say real quick, Marty Snyder, friend of OG55. We love you, Marty. We love you, man.
Marty!
Very much. Very much so. Very much so.
We love Julie. Oh,
we love
man.
Chewy, and we love Marty.
That is I can't wait for the park hopping time. Removed. Oh,
yeah. Oh, I'm telling you.
That. I mean, Walt Disney World, it's 2 p.m. Some of those parks, they only are open till 6. I mean, that's wild. Come on. Like, it's ridiculous. It's some of these things are just like, we can adjust these, and I think they will.
Yeah, no, they absolutely will. They absolutely will. Yeah, they absolutely will. And even Governor Gavin Newsom.
And I got to own that. And so I want to apologize to you.
Exactly.
Oh, man, a lot of apologies going on today. I like it.
What does Josh DeMauro say? He says, sometimes we get things wrong. Sometimes we will adjust, right? Also too, Now, what's the interesting thing? Because we know, okay, we're getting what is it? What's that nighttime show called at Walt Disney World? The fireworks show.
And
Happily Ever After.
Happily Ever After. Sorry, yeah. Got a lot of names and stuff going through my head right now. Happily Ever After. We know it's coming back. We know Harmonious is going to be replaced. What happens to the Star Cruiser?
Oh, that's an interesting thing. The Star Cruiser is something that like you can fix it pretty. I don't want to say easily because I know it's so easy to just kind of like we can just fucking do this,
Yeah.
But really, if they got rid of the timeline and you had look, the Disney Cruises has different itineraries. They have Star Wars Days at Sea, they have Marvel Day at Sea, they have all these different things depending on what cruise you go on, different locales, different destinations.
Mm-hmm.
Why doesn't the Star Cruiser do the same? You can have a prequel itinerary. I know, Ethan, you're a young guy, right? You're a young guy. You grew up, like you talked about on the pregame show. We were talking about how you grew up on the prequels. Like,
I'd love a prequel one.
Right. Like someone of your age would probably be very much more enticed to go on the Star Cruiser if it was maybe based on Anakin, Ahsoka, Kenobi. You got this General Grievous walking around, a prequel itinerary. Or what about the old folks like me and Dre, right? The old fogies, right? We want the OT. You can have a whole itinerary based on Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia and Han Solo and, our good friend, Chewie, right?
Yeah, I want R2.
Right. And R2 and all, right? There's all these options. You can do that. Now, on top of that, what you can do is you can actually lower the price. Now, look, I'm not saying like rock bottom deals or anything, but like, hey, even if you price the Star Cruiser like the Grand Californian, $800 or $900 a night, you're still cheaper than what you're paying now over there. And that would make a huge difference. They got to get away from pricing the Star Cruiser like a cruise line and price it more like a high-end Disney hotel. And if you can do that and you add more eras of the Star Wars universe and incorporate every generation, you have gold right there. You have gold. I think it would be phenomenal.
Yeah, I would have to look at to see if that kind of plays out with the what is it? The cost for labor and so forth. You have some pretty big fees regarding the actors and so forth that you have to kind of address. So if they can work it out, yeah, different eras for sure. You can have like, hey, during the spring you have the prequels. During the summer you have the OT and that kind of stuff. Now I think TS Wade actually. TS Wade 2, maybe make it original Star Wars only with Mandalorian and Grogu. Apparently, Grogu and Mando was already in the works even before this. You see this bassinet version of Grogu at the Gardner Holt Productions booth, at the any audio animatronics booth over there at APA, which Braden was so kind to document for us over his channel at Mickey Views. But you see that little Grogu there. From what I understand, that was commissioned for use in the Star Cruiser. So, I know there are some changes coming, but it's like I think you're going to need a little bit more in order to make this super attractive to a wider demographic than what's there right now. Because I'm telling you that's. We're already seeing like a discounting, right? I think 30% off for DVC guests, for example. I think that will continue, right? Yeah, I know. But there's going to have to be some alterations made there for sure.
No, they will. There absolutely will be. I think they have to. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where like they can't abandon it at this point. Like they're kind of in now. It's like the mob, right? Like you're in, like you can't get out. So now they got to really figure it out. Like they got to figure out how they're going to make this thing successful. And there are ways to do that. And I would also bring in people like like a Jon Favreau and a Dave Filoni and kind of pick their brain as to what they think they should do, what they should do in regards to lure more guests in, because these guys understand Star Wars a lot more than say Kathleen Kennedy or even Imagineering.
Which I'm shocked they didn't consult with those two before this. That was the route they should have went into. Apparently, the budget was cut in some places, right? Because obviously it was developed while the whole world was shut down, so they had to make concessions here and there. There are some things you can address because I don't think that 25% occupancy rate or whatever it's at right now, maybe even lower than that, I don't think that's going to be good for Disney's bottom line going forward here. So got to do something there. Again, this was Chapek's baby. Got to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta figure it out.
Oh man,
Gotta figure it out. But I will say this: there's potential there. And they just gotta tap into that a little bit. And I think that if they can tap into that, I think you'll be okay.
Yeah. Was there anything else we needed to address, Wizard?
I think that was it. We covered everything. Wow, in this quick hour and 40 minutes. Wow, that flew by.
Oh, I think the only other thing I can think of, really quickly, Gianna's Bayou Adventure, that's still going forward, I think, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes. Now, please put some more thought into it.
Right. Can we just have Bob Iger, if he does nothing else, can he just look at the model and go, we got to work on this? If we can do nothing else, can we do that? I think everybody would be happy.
I'll take a 6-month delay if he just does that. Like, that's it.
That is one big pile of shit.
Exactly, right? No, it does not look good, right? The product is necessarily not there, and it's so far away from, hey, this is a ride going through, the story of Princess and the Frog, right? It's so far away from that. We got to get back to that a little bit, I mean, look, is Splash Mountain days, I think, are numbered, but can we at least get a better attraction that replaces it? I think that's possible.
Well, and Princess and the Frog, and I've said this a million times until I'm blue in the face, is a good IP for this attraction. It works. You can definitely make this a phenomenal retheme.
Oh, yes.
I mean, imagine on this kind of scale, like that Pirates of the Caribbean kind of bayou kind of energy with the fireflies. Oh God, the potential is there. But you gotta hone that in. You gotta do it right. We don't want Mist Mountain. We don't want the mist, the whatever that crap was at D23. We don't want
the water tower with the crown on top. It's no.
Literally said colorful. Look at, we have colorful mist as a
mist. But before we go, Ethan, just to boost your views and to benefit the algorithm, I'm going to do a little Monster Energy drink, ASMR. Can you hear that? Oh, maybe not. There you go. Just say ASMR and it'll boost your views, I'm sure.
Like that was quite pleasing to the ear. Oh wow! You need your own channel. You need your separate ASMR. OG, the ASMR.
Now he's gonna rub the mug up against the mic right there.
Oh, there we go. There we go. You just got 1,000 more views just off of that because I said ASMR.
That was brilliant. Oh man, and all you lovely people in the chat. Wow, I'm surprised not one comment about Super Nintendo World. I'm shocked.
Yeah.
Oh, we can get into that. Because that's a whole nother can of worms too with Toontown and that whole thing.
The opening date and everything and how they're mysteriously only days apart.
I know, right? Wow, I'm getting a call for that. Must be only Disney people in this chat right now. But well, thank you everyone for joining the chat, people, and the OG55 crew. Dre, where can they find you?
Hey, best place to find me is going to be on Twitter. It's right down there at VashSky. Just go ahead and type that in, and it should pop up for, as Christine Wastelands McCarthy would say, for all the robust discussion right there. Lots of discussion, I will say. And hey, OG, do you have that drop right there?
Oh, I got that drop. Hey, Walt, take it away, buddy.
And there's the biggest bargain of all.
Not only is that Christine Wastelands McCarthy, but also it is, he was talking about the bargain of the bundle, which is Orange Grove 55, where you can catch shows like Citrus Corner, Orange Nerd, and my own there at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove.
And hey, look, you know what? Because I love Vash. Here we go. We're gonna close it out right for Vash. Here we go.
And now, the man with many titles, bringing you juicy news and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove, Mr. Vash Sky.
All right. Okay. I get it. But let's stay humble. I do appreciate the accolades, sir. Thank you.
Absolutely,
and where
absolutely.
can we find you, OG?
You can find me right here on OG55, Orange Grove 55 on YouTube and on the Twitters, where we do content all the time in regards to the Disney parks, especially the Disneyland Resort, because it is the superior resort in America.
Right.
It is, right? Disneyland Resort, baby. The Disneyland Resort. We also talk a lot about... We also talk a lot about, but in all seriousness, we also talk a lot about Walt Disney World. We talk a lot about streaming, television, movies, all of it. The corporate end of it, we talk a lot about Bobby Chapek and Iger and all that good stuff. Really, we're over at OG55. We're just kind of like a fireside chat, just talking about everything that's kind of on our minds in regards to like the theme park nerddom and film fandom and what have you. So we just like to get together with a lot of people, like-minded people, and just talk about all this stuff. So that's what we do. It's Orange Grove 55 on YouTube. And Wizard, you are a friend of the channel. We love you, and thank you so much for having us on, brother. We do appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
Bree, thank you very much. And thank you guys in the comments for joining. And we'll see you later on today for Super Nintendo
Take care now.
World. Peace. Peace and peace.